Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Training Industry Leader Talk. We have reached our final session of today's event on the role of on-demand learning. Today's event is brought to us by Skillable, Edcast, Future Think, Biz Library, and Allego. For those of you who may be just tuning in with us, I do have just a few housekeeping items to review that will help you get the most out of your time with us. Throughout the next session, please feel free to chat with other attendees or with myself or other panelists in the chat window. And be sure to direct your questions for our speaker in your Q&A window. I'll monitor those chats throughout and save your questions for Q&A towards the end of the session. And I do encourage you to share the information you receive on social media by using the handle that you see on your screen, which is Training Industry without the Y. And at the end of your time with us, you'll notice a survey has popped open in your browser. And we do rely on your feedback to inform future training industry events. So please feel free to share your thoughts with us there. And lastly, all of the sessions today have been recorded and will be available on demand at trainingindustry.com. You'll receive a follow-up email from us sometime tomorrow with a link to all of the sessions for you to watch again later, share with your team. We'll also provide some resources from our sponsors. If this is your first training industry event, we'd like to welcome you. The goal of our virtual conference today and all of our resources is to provide our audience with the relevant information that will empower them to lead the business of learning. You can find all of the ways that we connect you with expert perspectives in the industry by visiting our website, trainingindustry.com. The next session is brought to us by Skillable. And before we dive into that session, I would like to share a brief message from them. Well, I'm having a little bit of issues playing that message, so I'm going to skip forward and go ahead and introduce our speaker, Frank Gartland.
Hey, Elizabeth, how's it going?
Going great. Everybody, Frank is Chief Product Officer at Skillable. He oversees the transformation of training to skilling through challenge-centric learning, hands-on skill development, and performance-based validation. Frank challenges teams, partners, and customers to create better methods to scale learning. He thrives on helping people reach their potential and loves building businesses that enable people to make a positive impact. Frank, it's so great to have you with us. I'm going to hand it off to you now.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. This is great. This has been a great event. Thank you so much for having us. We are super excited. And I know this is the very last session of the day, right?
It is. Got to bring the energy.
Is this kind of a save the best for last thing? Is that what this is?
It is.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping. That's what I was thinking. Okay, let's do this. Let's share my screen. Hey, those of you that have been troopers, like you've been here all day, let me just encourage you that it's almost over. This is going to be fun. I will try to make this exciting and enthusiastic. And let me go ahead and I will share my screen right now and I will get going and we can move on. We are Skillable and we are a company that we are focused on hands-on labs. That is our big thing. That's what we do in the world. And we're going to talk about skilling in a maybe a different way than you've heard it talked about before. So I'm super excited for this session. Looking forward to some great feedback in the chat window and some great Q&A. But when you think about labs, like we used to be called Learn on Demand Systems. We rebranded to Skillable last week. So you've heard of Learn on Demand Systems. That's us. We this year alone have delivered over 5 million labs, and it's not a typo. 5 million hands-on learning experiences to learners all over the world. And we take a partnership approach, even though that says partner. We definitely don't do a partner approach. We take a partnership approach. And performance-based testing, skilling, and a lot of different technologies is kind of our thing. And if you're someone that you're like, hey, our group needs something that can scale, I think we're kind of the one to talk to. And we're going to focus today really on how hands-on can help us with a lot of different issues. So number one, if you've been paying attention to any news or any blogs at all in the last couple of years, you'll know that that since like the 80s, we've been dealing with this massive skills shortage. In fact, in the 70s, the skills shortage was actually called the misery index. I don't know if you knew that or not, little known fact, but I'm glad they rebranded it, because the misery index would be a little less fun to talk about. But we're going to talk about some trends, what's missing from really curbing this skills shortage trend. And then a couple of concepts. Challenge-centric learning and skills validation frameworks are something that we're really pushing. And so again, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So stay with me. Let's get into the skills shortage. So there's a myriad of data. And I've chosen just a few things to talk about. And one of them is kind of a place to start, is that 4/5 of the skill shortage vacancies we have is because folks don't have the technical skills or the practical skills. The UK Department of Education did this in 2019. And I think that the reason I chose this quote to start is this practical word. So many people have done training on a certain thing, or maybe, hey, I did training on that technology a couple of years ago, but it's the cloud, right? It's changed a lot in a couple of years. And sometimes it's like, well, this person may have the skills, but do they have the real world practical skills to kind of, if something goes down, can they fix it? Like, and can they fix it correctly? And so this trend, like you look at this at 2019, well, this still isn't a new thing. Like if you go to this next statistic, the companies that are accelerating their investment in technology and its people, like 60% of the organizations are expecting an increased tech budget in 2022. 61% are expecting more headcount, like growing teams, which for a training industry kind of audience, this is great news, right? But it isn't really new. If you look back to 2005, folks have been getting more tech budget for a long time. A little dip there in 2020 with COVID, but again, roaring back with a 60% increase. If you think about this next one, this top graph, I think is super interesting. How many of these organizations are saying, this skills shortage has me so scared that I'm not going to be able to keep up with how much things are changing? 67% in 2021, more than any time in the last 6 years. They believe, like we're not going to be able to keep pace of change because we can't find the right folks. And if you look at IT has been growing steadily, except for 2020, and then wham, like what a recovery, 61% growing in headcount. Now, when you think about this is focused on technology thus far, but what are the technologies that people are needing? Like what is the shortage? And I think this is a really interesting slide. And that the shortage is at the top of the list of the two things that all of us could have just recited. I could have said, hey, Elizabeth, let's turn the mics on and let's all say it together. It's cybersecurity and big data. Like we all know that, right? But if you look at some of these other things, it's okay. Artificial intelligence, wow, 26%, that's cool. Enterprise architecture, not really a surprise. Automation and robotics, project management, a steady Eddie, always there. Change management, okay, that makes sense after COVID, like that's gonna get a little increase, but still like 18%. If you look at it, there's kind of a big time gradual decrease down all the way to blockchain, coming in at 8%. But then what's interesting is if you map what people believe are the shortages with the projects they're actually doing, it tells a little different story. Right? Internet of Things is a big one, like robotic and process, big. AI, it's only 6% of the people are even planning an implementation, in 2021, right? But if you look at cloud, it's like, okay, that's real. Like that's a now thing. Workloads are moving to the cloud at such a crazy pace. I think while I've been doing this presentation so far, like 5 different workloads have moved to the cloud, right? It's a right now thing. Now, AI is definitely big. It's definitely growing. It's super exciting. There's more things that are ML driven and AI driven than ever. But it's not like this. It's not the scale though that we're talking about with the cloud. So all these increases in projects that we're doing, projects we have to do, right? The skills shortage. How am I going to get enough people that know what they're doing? The question I have right there is, okay, well, is this only impacting IT, all these transformations? Is IT the only group we should be talking about? And this is where I've got like my first poll. And so, Elizabeth, I'm guessing that we're just going to have folks go to the chat and fill this out. So look at that. It's all, that's amazing. I love technology. So everyone grab your mouse, find your way over to this little Skillable Poll. What best describes your personal view on a business managed IT? Now, some of you might be saying, well, wait a minute, I don't know what business managed IT is. This is the idea. If you think back 10 years ago, right? It's like if you want to do anything in technology and you were the business leader, you had to go to IT, make your business case. IT would see if there was budget. IT would buy it. IT would deploy it on their time sometimes. IT would management. If I wanted to change, I'd go through IT. Well, business managed IT is this notion of no. I run sales here. We're going to go use this platform to drive our sales process. I'm going to have my own people in my team that manage that platform, right? Now, I might talk to IT about it, I might not, but I'd love you to click the option, like, is technology enabled? Like, is business enabled by business managed IT? Is it really not an enabler? It's like, man, the more business leaders that are doing their own tech, that's a problem. Like, that would be, it's not an enabler. What do you think it is? And then Elizabeth, if we're in a spot where, I don't know if we can share the results, I would love to see what everyone is thinking, if possible.
We absolutely can. All right, everybody, if you haven't done so yet, I am about to close this poll, so get those responses in.
Come on, everybody.
2,
come.
and 1. All right, here are those results.
Look at that. Okay, so we've got, what is that? 92% of you think that, yep, it's an enabler. And now whether or not you want IT involved or not, really it's whether or not you enjoy the process of governance, maybe, right? Which 54% of you are fine with that. 8% are like, you know what? I don't know. I don't think it's a great idea. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That is great information. Let's go ahead and hide that now. Now let's look at what this report from Harvey Ash Group says. Very funny, like 90%. We were at 92%. This was at 90% with over, like, I think it was like 5,000 respondents, a little more than that. But 90% of the folks are like, you know what? Business managed IT makes sense. Like, let's let the business manage IT. Okay, so let's connect this trend, right? Let's connect this trend to something that we can sink our teeth into. What are the results of this sort of a movement? Like, let's think about things like, you know, I don't know, I'm getting up there. I've been around a little bit, so I remember what I'm calling the old world. Like, it doesn't feel like I should be calling it old world. It doesn't feel that long ago. But in the old world, like, software companies, like enterprise businesses, they would sell to the IT department. And the IT department would get their budget and they would pay for it right then, right? I get all my money up front. We all know that cloud and SaaS has changed that quite a bit here over the last, 15 to 20 years. And software companies now are selling to the business leader more often, and they're getting paid monthly. Not every time, but more often. But what does that do? Well, all of a sudden we go from a place where I've got 2 or 3 people in the IT department, or 20 or 30 people, depending on the company, or 150 to thousands of people, depending. But it's a very small relative group of people that need trained. Where now we've got all kinds of technology skilling needs. It's almost like every role needs some sort of technology skilling. Departments across the company, they lean on IT for all of it. I'm going to do it at their pace, their speed. They're going to fix it when they can. They're my one throat to choke, right? Is IT. Well, now I've got my own team. I've got my own folks, right? And I might have IT doing governance, as we said in our poll, but I've got my own folks to worry about now. Even though I run marketing, I've got some technical people that are doing all of my campaigns and all of my tagging and all of my drip campaigns. If I'm sales, I've got my CRM admin, and I've got my integrations with the marketing platform. I mean, these are all very technical things. In the old world, it's time for renewal of my maintenance contract, and I'm like, well, I don't really know if anyone's using this or not. I don't really know if I'm getting the value, but I know to keep my job, I better keep paying for it. So let's just renew the maintenance contract. Run out of budget, I might let maintenance lapse, right? But it's pretty much an IT decision. Whereas now business leaders are working with these software companies all the time, right? The customer success departments are now like huge departments because they're all about making sure that we're utilizing these platforms as much. And really that adoption and utilization, how are they using this and are they using it correctly? Meaning, are they skilled? It drives my whole business, right? As a software company now, right? So yes, like this transformation has impacted training, but I think in many ways that folks don't yet appreciate. So let's keep going on this. Like the next thing I think would be, how are these needs being fulfilled? Like, it's not like everybody's going to an instructor-led course, twice a month, right? So what's happening? Look at this, like cross-training, permanent hire training, apprentices, outsourcing. Hey, I'm just going to outsource this whole thing. Well, you still have to train them, right? Training is still a thing. So if you look at what stayed the same or what's increased, right? Like cross-training, like this is just peer training, right? This is, I know this, and now I need to get an extra skill. I need to now cover two things. So I'm maybe gonna have a peer help me with that, right? The apprenticeships, another form of peer training. But if you look at the numbers that have decreased, it's like, well, people are maybe using contractors a little less. They're outsourcing a little less for now. Permanent hires are tough, right? So what all that means is I'm not contracting, I'm not outsourcing, and I'm not adding new permanent hires while I'm scaling the workforce that I have, right? That's a big part of this. Now, as we continue to talk about skilling and some of these true trends that are happening and how they're shaping skilling, I think we also need to talk about work from home, right? Of course, you can't really, I don't know, I don't think in the last 2 years we've been able to have any conversations where we don't talk about this new phenomena. And I think there's two things that I'd like to point out. One is, everyone does agree that, hey, work-life balance has gotten better. I don't know if it has for me. I feel like I'm constantly doing this right here. I am in meeting after meeting after meeting online. The work-life balance has improved according to this. But what's interesting is mental wellness has not. If you look at the bottom. I know, most of you probably know people that are really struggling or have struggled over times with this. If you look at the engagement of the staff, it seems a lot harder to engage them. Like, I don't know if we know that they're engaged or not. Like, we hope they are. Are groups collaborating? Like, are they learning from one another? Hard to tell, right? I don't know, right? So there has been some big decreases in some areas that very clearly impact the skilling of our workforce, right? So what does all this mean? A lot of data. Love your patience in helping me kind of walk through and unpack this story. But I think what it all means is that every critical business function that you interact, your customers interact with, your partners, your employees, right? In some way, shape, or form, they all require some sort of practical, there's that practical word again. Like, it's not like, yeah, I took a class, or yeah, I sort of get it. It's like, I own it, right? If something happens, I know how to fix it, right? This practical technical expertise. And it's not just the old school IT software skills, right? Design, deploy, support, maintain. If you've been in technical training for a long time, you'll know that there's been courses on designing and deploying and supporting and maintaining or optimizing, troubleshoot, whatever it is, for years, but it's the critical thinking skills. Like, think about that. The critical thinking skills are the ones that get missed. If my way of learning is, hey, I've got a really fun personality that does these videos online, and I can watch these videos and they're really fun. Well, okay, are you learning some skills? Maybe, but are you learning the critical thinking skills of how if this went down today, or we just got hacked? Do you own the skills needed to really analyze the situation, work with other team members, identify, isolate, resolve that problem? Do you have those critical thinking skills? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. And I think also there's so many more tools that you need expertise with, right? Because our employees, our team members are all having to learn more and more things. It's like everybody needs to bring data to the meeting, right? Everybody's looking for a better way to tell a data story and a visualization. Like, more people than ever are good at Power BI and Tableau and even just Excel, like pivot tables, right? Collaboration software. Oh my goodness! Like, think back 2 years ago, we all used Teams, or we used Zoom. I couldn't remember what we were using right now. Zoom. Now everybody is an expert, right? But more people know how to code. More people are administering cloud applications. Everybody's thinking about, hey, does this impact cybersecurity? So all of this, the question has to be, I think, well, okay, what is missing then? Like, this isn't, it's not like we're going to go back to the way it was 10 years ago, right? Like, so what's missing? And we believe strongly, and our customers, I think, will believe too, that having real, genuine live environments, safe environments, that's the real deal, not simulation, but real environment where people can learn while they're doing, right? Think of it this way. You've got a team member, you've got 10 team members, and you're like, okay, you know what? These guys are busy, but they've got a couple of hours. Do you want them to spend a couple of hours watching a video? Or do you want them to spend a couple of hours in the cloud application, like doing the work? Like, where are they going to learn more? Watching a video, maybe doing email on the side, or literally doing the work, failing fast, failing forward, figuring it out. Okay, I think we believe that this is a big thing that's missing. Well, if it's missing, then what's missing is this idea of providing learners with ways to just get good, right? We talk skill mastery, and what happens when you're really good at something? Your confidence goes up, right? So when you get hacked, you want people going, I got this. You don't want people going, oh man, I'm not ready for that. Like, confidence is key, right? When something's wrong or when we're designing, you want people to be masters, right? That have this responsibility. And confidence comes from validation. If you've never done something before, confidence is arrogance, right? But if you've done it and been validated, that's real confidence. Like, that's trustworthy confidence. And so the challenge, though, is how are you going to do that? Spending time in AWS, spending time in Azure, like, someone's got to pay for that. Like, they're not giving that away for free too often, right? And you can only do so much with a trial account, right? Some of these things, you've got to get your trial account, and then you'd have to set up a whole crazy environment, load a bunch of data, and then by the time you get a couple people learning, your trial's up, right? I mean, it's how do you scale hands-on experiences? Well, most people don't. Most people don't. And let's think about that. Like, what's the reality? Labs are hard, and man, can they get expensive. And they've always been this way. Even in the 90s, when I used to teach, I mean, setting up labs, it was like every Monday morning for training. If you ever worked at a training company in the 90s, you know, Monday morning was kind of like I hope everybody's lab works, right? How many people were teaching a class and someone had to buddy up? My lab doesn't work. Well, buddy up with John over there, right? Now, John and this person only get to do half, right? Labs are hard. And so as a result, companies just struggle. And in the end, they just cannot provide the real hands-on experience people need until it's in production and it's go time, right? That's just a reality. I think also labs aren't designed to teach. It's an interesting one because labs are so hard. Just getting at scale, right? The right machine with the right RAM and the right storage with the right operating system and applications and the versions and the patches. I mean, it's a big deal. Believe me, this is what we do for a living. It's a big deal, right? Just getting labs that work so that John doesn't have to go sit with Polly and they have to share a lab, right? I mean, just getting it to work is so hard that companies are good there. They stop at this notion of, can we build labs that teach? And so the idea there is that learners miss opportunities, become just better, more capable, right? And then finally, labs aren't validated. I mean, remember when I used to teach, people would be like, okay, I'm done with the lab, but what did I just do? Like, when would I do that? That happened all the time. It still happens to this day. You know, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but learners miss opportunities, become more confident because they go through a lab, even if they get a lab, if they in an experience where they can be in a course, a remote class, or an on-demand kind of session, and they get access to hands-on, they can just kind of do stuff. Like, they can play, but are they doing the right things, right? This is where we believe that there's some advantages to this challenge-centric learning. That was my third point on my agenda. So what, if you're anything like me, you're like, okay, I don't even, challenge-centric learning, what the heck is that? Well, this is a new instructional design methodology that's really designed to help learners obtain skills while they're doing things. It's this whole learn by doing notion. And we'll talk about it a little bit. I'm not going to make this a challenge-centric learning presentation, but it's important, I think, that we as representatives and of the training industry, right? Both figuratively and, you know, larger, right? How can we get people to really learn these things? Like, how can we start validating whether people know things by the outcomes of what they do, as opposed to, did they watch a video? Hey, they have a course completion certificate. Okay. I mean, what does that mean, right? This idea of having a learning experience that sort of assesses learners, guides them when they need it, and then validates it and then repeats. It's like an endless cycle of, hey, go do this. Well, okay, they did it. That's great. That means it must be at this level. Now do that. Now do this. And pretty soon I run into something where I struggle. Okay, well, let's give them a hint. Let's give her a clue, right? I guide a little bit. All of it's on demand, but I now, once I figure it out, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Well, I click here, I click there. Well, oh, hey, wait a minute. Then I just do this. Okay. And then right then, you did it. That's right. You put the database in the right place. It has the right permissions. It's the right configuration. Good job. I'm validated now. I'm like, hey, you know what? I figured that out. I'm confident. I'm ready to go. That's the idea. Challenge-centric learning, it builds confidence because it validates people on what they did, on the outcomes of what they did. It validates on results. It doesn't just say, hey, did they guess right on a multiple choice question, right? It isn't just a course completion certificate. Now, is there any evidence to back this up? I think everybody should bring evidence to everything. And I'm not going to, again, bore you with some of this stuff, but there's a lot of science that's been validated for years as far as what do adult learners need. You know, adult learners do need to be put into a real world situation. We all believe in scenario-based learning. Just getting an adult in a place and saying, okay, do this, do this, do this is less than saying, okay, hey, here's a situation you could see yourself in. You need to prepare yourself so you're ready, right? That's all about relevance. You've got experiential learning. Like, it's not as good to just have a simulation. It's not as good to have a, well, think about this. Here's a picture. It's not as good as just watching someone do a demo, right? If I'm really in it, if I'm submersed into the experience, right? Again, it's a whole nother level of relevance for me. This idea of learning by doing is maybe the most important on the slide. The notion that as an adult, I need to figure it out. As I explore around, as I click around in the cloud interface, I'm on AWS, not only do I remember what I learned, but I learn things way faster. And I also learn additional things along the way. Like my whole experience is more broad, but I need it to challenge. I need to fail. I need to do something wrong. I need to blow it up. And I learn that way. And then that's really related to Robert and Elizabeth Bjork's notion of desirable difficulties, right? If something is too easy, people give up. They're like, this is dumb. This is a waste of my time, and they leave. If it's too hard, they might leave faster, right? It can't be too hard either. It's tough. Like, I have to get stuck, but not too stuck, right? So challenge-centric learning is an approach that enables instructional designers, lab developers, you know, businesses to create learning experiences that give all three of these things. So let me just give you one small, silly example of what I mean. So let's say that your learners, they launch a lab. And let's start with the one on the right. So pretend that this is hidden, it should be. Let's start with the one on the right. A traditional lab will say, hey, you've got to set the times up. Well, this lab will enable you to set the time. So from the start, man, you click here, you double click there, you click there. This is how labs are done 95 or more % of the time. My youngest kids could do this lab. It's not hard, right? These are the labs that people do. And then they're like, well, I'm done, but when would I do that? Like, well, the context is missing. Whereas a challenge-centric lab would say, hey, you got a new team member, lives in Chicago, you got to set the time zone, go. You know, in one side, it's like, well, okay, I see the time, the clock is there. Let me right click that. Oh, there's a property. Okay, good. Oh, time zone. There it is. I discover it on my own, which gives me confidence. And once I do it, good. Now let's get a harder problem, right? And if I screw up, if I click the wrong thing, okay, well, that wasn't right. Now where do I go? Right? I'm learning as I'm figuring it out, as opposed to when would I do that? Like what you know, I didn't really, I did some rote things. I followed some instructions. You know, learning to bake a cake is a similar thing, right? If you're just following the instructions, are you really learning to bake the cake, or did you just follow directions? That's the idea. So next thing I'll say, and this is kind of our final bit, is this idea of adopting a skills validation framework. So skills validation, we get that in a framework. Okay, so when we talk about skills validation, really, there's several ways that organizations need to validate skills. And so just to name a few, right, there's pre-training assessment. So I want to know, hey, what does this person know right now? Like that way I know what their training plan ought to be, right? What should their learning journal look like? Well, I need to assess them first, right? That's common. Assessment is also done a lot in candidate validation. Like I'm in recruiting and I'm like, look, we've got like 4,000 people that want this one job. I need something that tells me who's good at this, right? Who knows it? So pre-training assessment is a thing, right? Then there's during an instructor-led class or during an on-demand course. Like what are the integrated hands-on labs that people have? Once people are done with class, boy, it's great to give them a sandbox though to just practice, so that they continue to kind of use those new skills and go past that acquisition phase and maybe past the validation phase and start moving towards durability. And then there's once in a while where it's like, hey, this is something that I need to get certified on this. And now I got to study because I don't want my company to pay for the exam. I don't want to go fail it because all my buddies will make fun of me, right? That's not cool. Which I don't think they do that anymore. When I was younger, that's what they did to people. But certification would be final, right? In certain circumstances, super important. Like there's so many scenarios that there are some of the skills that you're going to need that you need to go get that full-on exam. Well, what we're saying is that every one of these hands-on should be the main course. Every one of them. Hands-on should be the main course. Video should be the supplement, right? Instructor feedback or office hours should be the supplement. But giving people hands-on is the way to do it. Find a platform where you can build hands-on experiences that allow folks to get validated skills. And then here's how the framework would work for you. This is how we kind of walk our customers through it. Is the first thing is architect this learning environment, which sometimes can be really complicated, right? You might need, hey, we've got to connect to Azure. I need a VM with this. I need another VM that's got this database. Depending on what you're trying to train, the environment is a big deal, right? And then once you have the environment and all the connections and everything's all connected, which is what our platform does, then it's like, okay, let's upload the sample data sets. Let's configure things. Let's get some scripts to automate it. Because you're going to do a big data science lab. You don't want a data scientist to have to spend a day and a half like just setting up the environment, with huge data sets and tools, right? It should be done for them so they can practice on skills, right? So tailoring the environment is big. And then what's cool is you save it. Save it as a template. Now we have dozens and dozens of templates that most of our customers start with, right? So you start with a template that's close, then you add your salt and pepper, right? And then you save it as your template. Once you then have a template, then it's about, well, let's reuse that thing. Let's take that investment in what you architected and let's reuse it. Create scored hands-on labs, create sandboxes for practice. You want to do some testing, use the exact same environments, right? Just change the instructions, change what you present, change the remediation that you might include in a scored hands-on lab. You might not include that remediation on a performance test, right? But you reuse those environments. And then once you've built all these different learning experiences, right? Now I'm going to repurpose the learning experiences even one step further. Now I'm going to say, you know what? I've got skilling stuff for my team. That's what I needed. But you know what? I know that our channel management people, like they've got like a globally distributed group of sales engineers, and they've got field engineers, we've got partners. They need to get people skilled and they don't have anything. Well, hey, just use what we did. You can either use the environments we did over here, right? Or you can just reuse the full-on labs, right? There's so much reuse, so much savings, right? Because remember back to our problem, why don't people do more hands-on? It's expensive because you can't do all this reuse and repurposing. That's the core of what we believe that organizations need to do to close down the skills gap for them, right? You are struggling, your customers are struggling with the skills gap. What are the things that you can do to help your customers get past it? We believe, and we've seen where this is a way to do it. So, hey, I really, really appreciate the time. And I am excited, Elizabeth, about getting some questions, and let's have some conversation.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Frank. Everybody, if you have questions for Frank, now is a great time to ask them. Pop open your Q&A window and start typing those in now.
Oh, I should have preempted that a little bit. That's a rookie mistake on my part.
Oh, well, lucky for you, we've got a few questions here in the queue. So let's get started with one of those from Pam. How long does it take to realize benefits from implementing challenge-centric learning?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that question. You know, there's no doubt there's some dependencies on the scenario, like, you know, and where your audiences are, how distributed they are. But Tech Data actually did a case study with us not long ago. You know, Jenny Davis is our VP of marketing. She is, by the way, one of the coolest people in the wide world. Jenny, if you would do me a favor, if you can find the link to that and throw it in the chat. But what Tech Data did is they actually used a thing called Challenge Labs, which is a product that we publish. We use our platform ourselves to build these learning experiences. And they had challenges getting a whole slew of folks that are helping to sell skilled in certain places. And they used Challenge Labs to do it. And it was very, very quick turnaround. I mean, they were able to roll it out very quickly. And they got almost immediate feedback. Like their learners were to a person. We're just like, oh my gosh, this is great. This is helpful. This is different. And I feel like I'm actually learning something with these. So good question, Pam.
Awesome. Thanks, Frank. Okay, here's a question from Roberta, who's wondering, can you create labs for any proprietary software?
Roberta, another stellar question. Any is a big word. I would say maybe not any, but I would say like it's a crazy like how many. So if you have an application that runs in Hyper-V or VMware, like a virtual machine, or if it can run in a container, or if it has workloads or whatever that runs in Azure, or if it runs in AWS, which I pretty much exhausted a ton of things, right? Then the answer is almost always yes, absolutely. Our platform can help you to virtualize those and create all these hands-on experiences I've talked about. You'll notice Google Cloud Platform is one that I didn't mention, and we will have that capability in Q1. So good question, Roberta. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Next question is from Wanda, who is wondering, what are some of the actual benefits your customers have seen?
Hey, Wanda. Boy, that's a good question. I like the practicality of that. I think that really a lot of what I've just spoken about is captures it, but I can see where the question is here's how I'd answer that. I'd say, one, most of the time, our customers are building their own labs. Like they're just trying to build stuff and they're shipping VMs around, or they're putting VMs up in Azure or somewhere. And it's really hard. And so I think for a lot of our customers, just the idea of, oh my gosh, this platform like does all this. Like you guys already have like full-on connections to AWS and Azure. Like I don't even have to worry about it. I can just click buttons and I got things provisioned already. Like it's amazing how much it takes something that for many departments, it's like, how do we don't want to work with IT on this because they would go to, so a lot of them, their IT department is the biggest enemy. The IT department is like, look, you guys are taking up way too much space on these servers. Like, this is crazy. You're costing us too much money. So then they've got to, right when they start getting, some momentum, it's too expensive. So they have to slow down. And so I think just finding a cost-effective way that is better than what, if it took them, they could take 10 years and not build what we have built over the last 20. And so having something that just works and is already thought through the scenarios that they'll run into 5 years from now is, I think, the biggest thing. I think that people they're stunned at how much more they can do than they ever imagined, right? And how easy it can be, right? I will say this, it's not like building labs is easy. It's not easy, but it is amazingly possible and kind of like exciting. I think that's what our customers would tell you.
Awesome. We've got somebody in the chat who is a senior consultant saying that they use asynchronous pre-work as opportunity to learn. Mm-hmm. They then use a synchronous session as a lab to do. Is there a particular workflow when considering structuring a lab experience?
Boy, that's another good question. I love this audience. That's great. I would say so much of it depends on your instructional designer and kind of what you're trying to do. So I would never say that a particular approach is the wrong approach. What I would say though is that for us, the way we tend to drive instructional design in those early conversations is let's do the pre-work and hands-on. Like let's literally say, let's have a relatively straightforward lab and let's have everybody take the lab and then let's validate it and let's get data and go, hey, you know what? 90% of these folks are ready to go, but if 5 of them, they need some help, right? And so basically all of it is a you start with something a little simple and a foundation, and then you go up to something a little more advanced, and then you finish with something expert or kind of a capstone experience. But I would take these asynchronous experiences and make them hands-on experiences, challenge-centric hands-on learning experiences. Then in your synchronous parts, what we have a lot of customers that have a synchronous component, and a lot of it is more of an office hours where the instructors or the leaders, depending on the scenario, they're able to look at the real data of the learners and kind of know, here's how my audience is kind of performed. So they can have some more appropriately prepared content and some more appropriately prepared questions. And then the dialogue gets where a lot of learning happens. And we believe collaborative learning is the next thing that is going to be a big deal. We believe challenge-centric learning is the big thing right now. And then it's going to get to collaborative learning where we've got shared labs and you'll have teams of people all solving problems together, just like they need to do on the job, right? And there'll be, asynchronous sessions where folks are going in and doing things and laying the notes of where they left off. And then there'll be a collaborative meeting where the leader can kind of walk people through, okay, what did you find? What did you learn? Where did you get tripped up? Right? And just continue moving up the hierarchy of the way people are assimilating all these new concepts. So great question.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Christina had a great comment in the chat that I'll pose to you as a question. Do you think that the traditional lab and the challenge-centric lab are mutually exclusive, or can you have both?
You absolutely can have both. We have like all the customers that are doing challenge labs for certain things. Oh, well, I wouldn't say all, but a lot of them are still doing traditional labs for some things. I think a lot of it depends on your lab developers. Like do your lab developers, like what we found is shifting groups, instructional designers and lab developers, but lab developers is the stickier one. From this idea of, okay, here's how we built labs for the last several years to, hey, we're not going to write really prescriptive steps anymore. We're going to write kind of open steps. We're going to say, hey, do this instead of click here, click here, click here. It's hard. And so a lot of folks are kind of in the middle of the transition. So you absolutely can do both. And I think that if you need to do both, then being really strategic about, okay, maybe the foundational labs are the traditional ones. And then the more up you go, the more challenge-centric you get. Because by nature, obviously, a performance-based test lab. So if I'm going to take a Microsoft or an AWS exam, right? Well, those labs are written so that it's not giving the question and answer away. It's like, hey, go do this, and you got to go do it. They're going to judge you on the outcome, right? Those labs are performance-based by nature. So if you're like, you know what, budgetarily or talent-wise, we really can only do a certain small number, I would always have the capstone labs and the more advanced labs as the challenge-centric and lean on the traditional labs for the more fundamentals.
Great answer. All right, perfect. Thanks. Well, thanks, Frank. We are just about out of time and out of questions for now. So once again, thank you for being with us, sharing this great content and answering all these questions.
Elizabeth, you've been fantastic to work with. We really appreciate you. We treasure this partnership. And if you're listening still, thank you so much for sticking around. We love you and hope you have a great rest of your week.
Awesome. Thanks, Frank. All right, everybody. Just to wrap us up here, just want to thank you all for being with us. Thanks to all of our dynamic speakers and to our sponsors of today's event. We had Skillable, EdCast, Biz Library, Future Think, and Allego. All of today's sessions are pre-qualified for a credit hour by SHRM, HRCI, ISPI, and CPTM. You can email webinars@trainingindustry.com for information on how to get that credit. And I certainly invite you to join us for an upcoming Training Industry Leader Talk happening in December. This one covers the learner experience. You can sign up for this and other free events at trainingindustry.com/webinar. And if you're looking for even more information on the role of on-demand learning in your organization, be sure to check out our online Learning Libraries Market Segment Report that breaks down the key players and new innovations in the market. You can learn more about this at trainingindustry.com/research. One last reminder that when you exit the event, a survey will pop open, and we would greatly appreciate your thoughts on today's sessions and speakers. Once again, thanks to all of you for your time and attention throughout the day today. Until next time, I'm Elizabeth Parker, and I hope you all have a great day.